What's up? All right. So we are back for Healing from Divorce Part 6. I am Onjeinika Richardson. And so if you are joining me for the first time, welcome. I have been doing this series on healing from divorce to hopefully help somebody else that's out there and is going through the same thing that I've had to deal with. Um, So I'm just going to be talking to you tonight about shifting your perspective. So I want to talk to you about what it means when you need to change how you're looking at it. And I say it like this: God is in the details. Because sometimes when you're going through a difficult time, especially something as difficult as divorce, it is really hard to see like the silver lining, or to understand that things will be okay in the long run. It's difficult when you're in the middle of it, and so that's why I've stopped by to encourage you. Make sure my volume is up, and just to give you hopefully a different way of thinking about this that can help you as you move forward. And as I always say, as I've been doing these talks, remember that when somebody leaves you, or when a person walks out of your life, it doesn't change your value. Your value is inherent. You are valuable and you are enough just like you are, just by yourself. Doesn't mean that you don't need to work on some things, doesn't mean that you can't be better and that you can't make changes, but you are valuable no matter who stays or who goes. And so I just want you to remember that as we're talking tonight. And so, yes, so divorce is so hard. We've talked about everything from the shame of divorce to last week, I talked about how you talk to your children when you're going through this. We've talked about tips, and steps to get you started when you are first, you first have to go through listening to your spouse say they don't want to be married anymore and what you should do. And I've even talked about the whole process of healing, which is acceptance, grief, forgiveness, and renewal. So there are a lot of moving parts that come with healing from divorce. And I also talked about finding closure for yourself, because divorce isn't always closure. And so there are lots of different things we could talk about, but I want to talk about shifting the perspective right now, because that is a big part of healing. And so whenever you're looking at healing from anything, even if it's not divorce, it could be anything, a lot of it is going to come from you. So it's your mindset. So the healing is internal. That has to take place. You have to have some growth inside you if you want to feel better or do better when you're going through something. And so that's basically what we're talking about tonight. But I want to hopefully share with you some ways and some things that help me that maybe can help you too. So when you first began dealing with this divorce, I'm sure it was hard. And you probably trying to wrap your mind around why, what's going on. You may have even thought about like ways to work through the situation, ways to work things out with your spouse. But once it becomes evident that that doesn't seem to be happening, then you need to shift. And so it's a part of acceptance, but it's also making up your mind that you are not going to stay in this hurt place and in this stuck place. And so sometimes it's good to think about it like, instead of what's happening to you, you need to think about the situation as what's happening for you. And so I'm gonna give you a little bit of my background just to help you with what I mean. And so when I began going through the separation and the process of divorce, I mentioned that I wasn't working. I didn't have a job. I'm a writer, and so I was freelancing at the time, writing for Forbes Marketplace, doing some work that I love, but it wasn't like sustainable work. And so at the time that I began going through this divorce, I didn't have a steady income, and so I was really fearful, didn't know what the next steps would be. But I was already looking for a job. And so all I could do was really pray harder and talk to myself and say, okay, you basically can't fail now. You have to get through this. And so I remember having a conversation and saying to my ex-husband, this this can't happen. Like, you can't leave me right now, because I don't even have a way to be on my feet. I don't have a way to really do everything that I need to. And so all of a sudden, it seemed like God just began to order my steps, right? He began to work things out. And I say it was God because the way I got the job that I have is just like amazing. I did not know of the company. I think I had seen their logo before because they're in quite a few big cities, but I didn't know of the company. I didn't know what they did. I didn't know they had an opening. And I basically knew nothing. And so I got what's kind of like a cold call to help them look for somebody that might be willing to do the work. Or if I felt like I could interview for it, I was offered to do that. And so that's just, to me, that's just a God thing. And so, like, there is no way I could have known about the job because I didn't even know what the company was. And obviously one thing led to another, and I ended up getting the job, and it was timely because he's an on-time God. And so that's why I'm saying sometimes it can be something that's happening for you, because although I was in the midst of a terrible situation, I also needed a job, right? I was looking anyway. I have kids that were going to college and all of that. And so the timeliness of the putting in the work and the prayers, I could definitely see that I wasn't responsible for the opportunity that had come before me. And so even though I was at a very low point, there were still some very good things happening for me on the other side. Now, I didn't yet know that, we weren't going to end up working things out and that I was going to end up divorced. I was hopeful that things were going to turn out the way that I wanted them to. However, I could still see that God was lining this up. And then it wasn't until later that I would understand why. And so I just want to use myself as an example because that's what happened. That's real. And I want to encourage you to look at your situation, and although it might look dire, it might look like, okay, this is not going to work out like I want it to, or I want to save my marriage even, and it's not looking like it's going that way. I want you to understand that even though that is true, there may also be another truth. And the other truth is, if that other person that you're married to, if they're not happy, and if they don't want to be in the marriage and they've expressed that to you, then how are you going to actually keep them there? How are you going to keep them, make them stay if they don't want to? And so perhaps, just perhaps, the idea of them telling you they don't want to be married anymore, they want a divorce, is something that you need to know. So it's like a revelation to you. If you didn't know it, then it's a revelation because you need to understand how that person feels. You need to understand if somebody wants to be with you, and also them saying that, being honest and telling you, well, hey, I don't want to be married anymore, it might help explain some things to you. So I don't know if you've been going through, bickering, fighting, fussing. I don't know what's been happening, because that's not always what's happening in marriages. Sometimes it's very calm, it's very quiet, it's peaceful, but that doesn't mean that everything's all right. And so you could have felt some, things that weren't good. You could have felt some emotions and not been sure where they were coming from. But now you are met with the revelation. Now they are talking, they're communicating, and they're letting you know. And so don't you kind of see how that is something that you need to know? No matter how painful it is, it's some information that is needed for you to be who you need to be, for you to deal in truth, for you to live your life the way it's supposed to go. You have to have all the cards on the table. And so that's why I say it's God in the details, because sometimes we don't go looking for things that we don't want to know the answer to. Sometimes we don't want to know. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to stir things up. We know that there's something wrong. We don't really want to talk about it. And so God has a way of revealing things to you, and it can be for your good. Now, how dare I say that, divorce can end up for your good? But I'm going to say it Because I think if you know what the flip side is, then the flip side is being unhappy, is being unfulfilled. It's possibly, always worried, is this person cheating on me? Are they being unfaithful? When they tell you they're going somewhere, are they really going? The trust issues. So things like that can make you really miserable. And life is too short to live it like that. Life is too short for you to constantly be worrying, checking on somebody that's supposed to be grown, right? Someone that you should trust, and someone that says that they're in this thing 100% with you. And here you are, you having the second guess. Or you're tiptoeing around because you don't want to start an argument. You don't want to spark, some kind of conflict. Or you are not able to do anything fun because this is a person that's just withdrawn. Whatever your case may be, if you really think about if that's how your life was, would you want to continue with it like that? Now, some people are going to say, yeah, because they want to be, they don't want to rock the boat. They want to be comfortable. But to me, that would not be comfortable. That's uncomfortable if someone is doing those kinds of things, or if you are the person that's having to keep quiet or having to shrink yourself. You're having to shrink yourself and be small so that the other person can thrive, so the other person can feel better. That's not a marriage. That's not how it was meant to be. That's not how it was designed to be. You're supposed to be able to both come to the table and both be there together and thrive in unity. And that's what makes it beautiful. And you are, to share your burdens with each other, to help each other out. It's not supposed to be like one person has to prop the other one up or whatever so that they get whatever they want. And so that to me is like the revelation of knowing how your spouse feels when maybe you didn't ask, or maybe there was going to be no way for you to find out. Now suddenly God has revealed to you this is what they're thinking. And when this happens, the best thing that you can do is to trust the information. If you don't believe in God, because I know that everybody doesn't, then you need to trust the information. Trust what the person is telling you when they finally speak up and say, hey, I don't want to be married anymore. And then you need to decide, okay, now what does this mean for me? And so this is where the shift in perspective comes in. Because you have the choice to sit there and wallow, you can, become sad and depressed. And there's nothing wrong with expressing those emotions, right? You can express those emotions, but you can't stay there because there's work to be done. There's sometimes children to still raise. There are things that you need to do for yourself. You got to take care of yourself. You got to eat. You have a purpose in this life. And so you can't stay in the sad and broken place forever. And so that is one of your choices. But the other choice is to think about what your life could possibly look like when the divorce occurs, like when a change happens. Sometimes, and then this might happen for women. Sometimes you do, if you're carrying the load and you're doing most of the parenting duties, and you're doing all of the pickups or whatever it is, you're doing the homework, you're doing all the things with the kids. Sometimes when they're with their father for the weekend or whatever, or however you do the days, or every other week, hopefully it's equal, then you do get that break, and vice versa for the other parent. And it can help you to be a better parent in some ways. Although you're not parenting in the same home, so to speak, you are both parenting. And so the child can still have their needs met, but so can you. And so sometimes that's a benefit that a lot of people don't see, because it is painful to be away from the kids. But when the time is split equally and nobody feels like they, aren't spending time with the children, it can come out to be beneficial. And this is what I've heard from other people, because that is not my case, because my children are older and they're in college. But some people have said that they really do enjoy when they do get those breaks, when they're with the other parent and they can trust, the other parent with the children, because they're their children. And then, they know that they love them too. So that's just one example. But you have to trust God also for your greater. You have to trust him in what he has for you. Because unfortunately, maybe it's not this marriage right now. And I think that if it were, things would work out. And so you don't ever have to stop believing that you're going to get through it and that things are going to get better. But if they don't work out, you need to trust God and you need to trust yourself. You need to trust yourself and understand that this is an opportunity for you to bloom. It is not a time for you to break down and to not be okay. It is going to take some time to heal, which is why I'm here trying to help talk you through it because I'm going through it. And although, like I said, it's been a year now, healing comes in waves. I had somebody ask me this just the other day online. How long did it take me to heal? And healing comes in waves. And so I'm not completely healed, but because I'm so much further in the process and because I have shifted my perspective, I can see the good in this divorce. Because, like I said, for one, you cannot make somebody else do something that they don't want to, no matter how much you love them, no matter how good you feel you are for them, no matter how long you've been together. You cannot make somebody want to stay and want to be with you. And so that part of it means you have to release them. And in releasing, you now have to come to terms with what does your life look like? You now have to figure out, who are you? I'm not saying you're not secure in who you are, but this is another opportunity. This is a fresh opportunity to do some introspection, to look at yourself, to think about your needs. What makes you happy? Are there new things you want to learn? Are there places you want to go? Are there things that you couldn't do in the marriage that maybe you're going to be able to do now that you're single or looking at becoming single? And so all of this requires a change in your perspective so that you're not so much looking at it as what's being taken away, but begin to look at it as what's being given to you. And remember that in your path forward, you do have that freedom now. You don't have to worry about the other person like you did before. And that can be a special gift just for you because we can still grow. We are here to grow, to learn, and to evolve. And so if you feel like you're a person that's constantly growing, then you could see this as an opportunity to go higher. Um, and it doesn't necessarily mean that even though now you're healing, that you are going to be single forever. So I'm not trying to get anybody to quickly get into a relationship or something like that. That's not what I'm thinking at all. But you never know down the line what God has for you. There were some thoughts that came to me when I was going through this. And one of the things was, I was just so sure when I was young that he was my soulmate. This was meant to be. But then as I started thinking about that thing, and I said, you know what? I was really young. Am I sure that, I had heard from God? Um, this is what he said. Am I sure? Am I sure that, he told me, this is the person that you're supposed to be with? Or was I really young and I was just kind of leaning to my own understanding? And I had to think about that. And I felt convicted in myself that I had to think about that. Um, and so I'm not putting that on anybody, but that is something, and I made a post about it because it came to my mind that perhaps this was something that I constructed. I don't know. If God constructed it, would it have turned out this way? So these are some things that you have to start thinking. And so it doesn't mean, that you could have been wrong. You could have been wrong. It doesn't mean that, you did something wrong and your marriage fell because of that. It could have been just like you chose wrong. And sometimes we have to admit that, and it's hard to take that accountability. That might be another talk that I do coming up, is accountability and forgiving ourselves, because sometimes we do make the wrong decisions, and it's okay to admit that. But let this place where you are right now be a place of awakening. Allow whatever God is revealing to you to come forth. Open your eyes to the truth. Pay attention to the behaviors that are around you. You can even ask yourself, you know, okay, this is the person that I chose, and I said I'm going to hang in there, and I said I'm going to stick this out. But if I'm being honest, is this something that I should do? Is this good for me? Is this a person that I would choose all over again? How did they grow? How did they change? How has this affected me? So I'm not telling you not to hope and pray that things work out, not to hope for reconciliation, but I'm saying open your eyes, be aware, look at what God is revealing to you, pay attention, observe, just pause for a second and think about it differently. And then you can also go further and you can say, well, what might my future look like? What might he be calling me to? If I don't know the full limitations of God and I'm just thinking with my human mind, then how do I know what's next? Right? And that's the thing that we do a lot of the time. Sometimes we limit God. And I had to check myself in that. Like every time I wanted to say, like this is the worst thing and I'm not gonna be okay again. I'm, not gonna be able to love again. I'm not gonna be all right. I would literally feel the Holy Spirit check me. And then I would talk to myself and I'd be like, you have that nudge for a reason. And it's telling you not to put limitations on God. Do not say out of your mouth that it can't get any better than this. In fact, you should be saying to God, God, show me how good it can get. Even in the midst of the battle, even when you're at your lowest, even when peril and chaos is going on around you, you can still say, God, show me how good it can get. God, walk me through this thing. Hold my hand while I go through this. And as you call on him and ask him, he will continue to reveal to you what the next step is. And even if you don't know, you still know that he's in it with you. And so that's how God can be in the details, and it can cause a shift in perspective. Um, and what it can also do is help heal your heart. Because although it's broken right now, and although this is something that you never imagined happening, it doesn't mean that you won't be whole again. It doesn't mean that you're not going to heal. And even if you feel like you're a person that handled it very well, you might have even expected it, you were prepared. Even if you feel like you're that person, you still need to take time with yourself. Or maybe your heart isn't broken. Maybe this is something that was, beneficial to you, and soothing to you when you heard, okay, I don't have to struggle with them anymore. I don't have to fight with them anymore. It still doesn't mean that you don't need to take time with yourself, because there's some benefit in that. Even if you're mostly intact, there's still benefit in taking time and seeing what the direction is for your life. What should your next step be? And so in this place where we are, as we are walking through separation and divorce, I just encourage you to understand that it's okay. It is okay to have to take time and heal, whether your heart was broken or whether it wasn't. But pay attention to all the keys and all the things that God. Pay attention to where he has you. Pay attention to the doors that he is opening for you. Just like I got that job out of the blue, it seemed like just when I needed it. God can open many doors. You just have to believe. You have to trust. And I did trust and I did believe and call on him because I knew that I needed help. And so if you allow God into your heart, it will be amazing the things that happen. It's really hard to experience, you know, that spiritual favor, and to see what God is doing if your heart's not open, if your heart is hard, and if you're bitter. And so I just encourage you to pray and listen, listen for the answer. And if you don't know God, that's okay. If you don't feel like, you're not a religious or a spiritual person, that's okay. Open your mind. Be positive. Think about how this could possibly work out in your favor. Understand that you are going to heal. And whether healing means you stay single forever and you are happy and whole single, or whether healing means that later on down the line you do wonderful and powerful ministry or volunteer work or whatever it is you want to do, or work in your career, or whether it means you find love again and you are off and doing better and on some adventure with that new person. No matter what it looks like, I want you to consider it. And that is how you shift your perspective and you begin to lift yourself out of this hole, this dark place that divorce can sometimes be. So that's what I have for you tonight. If you have missed any other lives, I encourage you to go back and watch them. They're all here on YouTube for you, somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes, most of them. Yeah, we're about at 25 minutes tonight. And so, yeah, but my intention is always to encourage you and to let you know that you will get through it. I have been through so many things in my life, and I don't want to keep going through things. Nobody wants battle after battle after battle. But as long as the Lord sits high and looks low, there's no way to stop me. I'm always going to come out. I'm not a fool. I don't invite drama and I don't invite horrible things into my life. But just because they come doesn't mean that I'm going to fall down. Or I might fall down for a little while, but I'm going to get back up. And so I'm trying to encourage you and let you know that you can do the same thing. It takes time, and sometimes it takes us working together and holding each other's hands and loving each other through it and having each other's backs. I got your back. And so if you want to talk about it, I have some consultation time. You can pop on my schedule, and it's a free 20-minute session if you want to see how I can help you. If you just want to ask questions, you can DM me or email me. I am here for you. I love to help you. I love to encourage people. That's what I do. And so yeah, just communicate, contact me if you need anything, and I